Right, live from our studios, this is your in-depth analysis of Eswatini's 2025-2026 budget speech, a fiscal roadmap that is going to define the nation's economic trajectory as well as the livelihoods of Eswatini. We're going to get into much detail with our panel. Right next to me we have Samuel Siwe, who is our journalist. You must know her face now from Tase Parliament, so it makes sense that she's here during this critical and crucial conversation. Also, Dr. George Chongwa, our economic analyst, who's going to help us drill into the numbers and see if they really make sense. Are they feasible for what we heard today from Minister Neil Reichenberg's pronouncement? Let's go for an ad break. We'll come back with the in-depth budget speech post-analysis.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. We are live from our studios. This is your in-depth analysis of Eswatini's 2025-2026 budget speech, a fiscal roadmap that is going to define the nation's economic trajectory in the year ahead. Now, this evening, we want to go beyond the figures to examine what this budget means for our economic growth, our job creation, as well as the livelihoods of Eswatini. Yet, 32.61 billion in government spending has increased significantly. Capital expenditure up by 14%, recurrent spending up 8.4%, and the economy is projected to expand by 8.3%, one of the highest growth rates in the region. But is the momentum sustainable? And what does it mean for households? What does it mean for businesses? What does it mean for investors? The numbers tell a compelling story. 5.41 billion allocated to education, 1.65 billion for agriculture, and 1.6 billion directed towards food security. Yet, the budget comes against a backdrop of 2.6 billion decline in SACU receipts. Now, this is a crucial reminder that fiscal resilience remains crucial. Now, Eswatini Revenue Service aims to collect a record of 16.5 billion signaling a shift towards greater domestic revenue generation. But the question is, will this be enough to sustain the ambitious targets? This evening, we cut through the rhetoric with expert insight from economist Dr. George Chongwa, as well as Samuel Siwe Koza, our journalist here, famously known from our famous program, Tase Parliament, as she normally says. Does it present risks that policymakers must navigate carefully? This is the analysis that matters. I'm Sfiso Ngumalo. I'm proud to be your host this evening once again for this exclusive budget speech post-analysis. Sam, starting out, you were there. tindvuna tembuso betkhona. It was also beautiful kubona itinyuform lapha ngivile na speaker ateka yona indzabe ukuthi abantu abesikole akufuna babe khona babona inqubo yaseparliament. Just your sentiments regarding i-atmosphere lapha tindvuna tembuso nato tiyavumelana nale budget speech vele.
Thank you so much. Asfiso siphindze sivusele nembukele ekhaya. Indeed, it was so encouraging kubona i-budget ilive ikhula ngalendlela significantly. I-atmosphere Sfiso was okay. Yet most of leti mvuna tembuso betingekho, I think, due to assignments lamanyenti elive. But kutfokotile kubona sikhuluma nabo after siba reactor to the budget. Siyathi ukuthi maybe labanye bebagadze imali thite siyakhumbula phela Sfiso ukuthi this budget infonywa speech from the throne lesibuya kuyo just hardly 2 weeks ago, on the 31st of January, lapho khona ingonyama beyivula khona the second session of the 12th Parliament. Tindvuna tembuso titfokotile, yes, but bayasho ukuthi kukhona lapho khona badzinga nabo ukuthi bacinise ngakhona. I'll make an example ngendvuna yaka housing. Washo ukuthi yes, imali esitfolile ngilele sihlale siyitfola over the years. But lokusho ukuthi thina enyalo kusinika umsebenzi ukuthi kufuna sale trainer our officers or send a department la ita khona ukuthi isikwelekela khona imali. Washo ukuthi currently they are working with FAO kwetama phela ukuthi le housing isale iti generatela yona imali. Akhumbula ukuthi ukhuluma ngekuthi nasikhuluma ngemadolobha even ngema structures lamakhulu even yethi le mali yangakhona ayisiyo le jablisako kusho kwayo indvuna the honorable Apollo Maphalala. So it's there. Unfortunately most of leti mvuna tembuso, like I said, betingekho. Sikhulumile nendvuna yakama sports lophinza bukenza abantu abamlabasha ne culture. Remember His Majesty said hulumende unemsebenzi also wekuqinisekisa indzaba yekugcina our cultural heritage. So which means lapho ke kufuna ngabe kungeteka budget for those projects. Kunema artists also even Sfiso lebeka solo akhala for the longest of time ukuthi kwesekeleka from government kuncane kakhulu. Lokusho ukuthi kufuna ukuthi na government aqinise ngakhona. Letiko leliphindze lifele bamhlabasha also indzaba yemathuba emsebenzi. I think before this budget sikhulumisene nebamhlabasha etingundleni letahlukene baveta ukuthi labakufisa ukuthi uhulumende aqinise ngetindzaba temathuba emsebenzi. Ukwenta njani ke uhulumende involving bamhlabasha nakhona kuma project lahlukene akuqinisa sona sikhwama lesibuke kuchaza bamhlabasha ngete business youth enterprise revolving fund labantu labasha nakhona labakhalile ukuthi still lemicabo iseselikhunyana.
You know, interesting, Samu, what you are submitting here, but also I just want to highlight the fact that you mentioned that some of the cabinet ministers were absent. But as Eswatini TV, we boast having you as the host of Dase Parliament. We can still drill down into, you know, their unique portfolios, looking at some of the things that they require to further, you know, improve their ministries. Doctor, let me come back to you. She's mentioning something interesting around the Ministry of Housing, as well as the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports Development. You know, the issue of an urgent need for an increase, yet they are still, you know, content with what they received. But I want to juxtapose that with what we saw today, a significant increase, and yet there are still cabinet ministries that are saying, you know what, we also needed to see a bit of increase with what we received. 32.61 billion emalangeni, that's a lot of money. They are saying that it has increased, you know, capital expenditure by 14%, recurrent spending at 8.4%. The big question there, you know, what informs this increment when there are still ministries that are saying we expected to get a bigger chunk compared to other years?
That's a very nice observation. First of all, we don't have to define budgeting, national budgeting, as simply a game of numbers.
Right.
That is the beginning of everything. Once we begin to understand what national budgeting is, not as a game of numbers, but as a national instrument for social economic growth and sustainability. It's a national instrument, not a game of numbers. So to the MPs or stakeholders or non-state actors or state actors who could have thought that we need more money, then we have to redefine budgeting.
Right,
right. Secondly, we also have to understand budgeting is an instrument of priorities, national priorities. Why do we talk about priorities? Resources are always limited. And when we talk about resources, financial resources are even more riskier because they depreciate with time, and considering various factors, especially exogenous factors or factors that are affecting the global world, we cannot risk much further than the increment to which Honorable Minister of Finance has recommended. In fact, if anything, we were supposed to remain as it was last year, just for safety reasons. But so the increase already by increase, it's a sign that the budget has been responsive. The key word there is responsive, not responsive. Responsive. How is it responding to both the urgent and the future needs of the society? That is called sustainability.
And as it continues to be responsive, one of the things that you always like to highlight is, yes, it has to, because responsive has an element of reactive towards it. It reacts to what is pertaining on the ground, but also it wants to be proactive, you know, to forecast some of the challenges that will come therein. We will have a conversation around the Ministry of ICT in terms of, you know, being proactive there. But Samu, let me come back to you. So when I go laga education, per usual, you know, the significant chunk goes towards it. Should we be surprised?
So I don't think so, especially because iltikolaga education, remember, libeselitfala nanabamfana bendlungulu also. So that budget education vele kuyadinga ukuthi invest more. I think it's around 16.6% of the total budget it went to education. Lokusho ukuthi silive vele, we need to invest more on education. I would just always go back as to the speech from the throne. Most of them are invested in education, which means that as a country we need to invest more in education. Surprisingly, no masi invest as a country in education, still kusese gaps la khona we kunema concerns la khona from CV out there ngenzaba ye education. Nasikhuluma ngenzaba ye scholarship, siyathi ukuthi emaswati incumbi ayakhala nawo sibene lithuba ke saxoxisana nabo bafundzile bebakhona njengoba ushito ukuthi ubabonile but fokodwa ukuthi at least ikhona increase kutaba nalo 1000 more loto ngeteka kulabafundi labafola sona scholarship akune bamfana bendlungulu nabo still even iyachubeka inombolo yabo iyakhula isikhulume ngenzaba ye ma structures etemfundo ase7 ukuthi incumbi yawo akekho kahle. I think His Majesty spoke about it, the Deputy Prime Minister spoke about it, nakahamba vakashela tindzawo letahlukene even ukuthi kunetikolo lafika watikhanza ukuthi adikeze ngendlela kahle. Si provide kanjani nge quality education in such structures. Lokusho ukuthi kufuna silive as much as we are still investing more on education, still we need to put more muscle on education.
Yeah, it's going to be important, as well as the employment there, because that's also another, you know, burning question around the employment of teachers from temporary, others that are still temporal, into, you know, permanent position. Let's come to sectoral allocations, Doctor. I'm interested in, you know, chiming into the 8.4 increase there in the recurrent budget, because there is the capital budget that is up 14%. This spending mix, does it indicate a strong push for long-term economic transformation? Or do you see any risks of an overheated fiscal policy there?
Well, fiscal policy is very dicey, because fiscal policy talks about expenditure and revenue. And not only that, fiscal policy is very vulnerable. That is why we talk about fiscal space. Now, we talk about fiscal space is to what degree is the country able to look after its financial affairs. That's fiscal space. So sometimes I'll give you an example. You are living in a two-roomed house, and then in your two-roomed house can only accommodate your bed, your fridge, and your TV. But from nowhere, you want to go and buy more things. Your space is small.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure you've got everything within the limited space. That's now prudence. So when we talk about sectoral transformation or sectoral development, we have to invest on triggers. The triggers are simply economic activities that you do that have got a reactive or ripple effect, a positive ripple effect, an enabling environment.
Right.
So let's say, for example, we know that we need to generate more income or more revenue. So let us look at incentives that are low-hanging fruits that will be triggers to economic activities. So we are going to identify those if entrepreneurship, if it's youth, if it is ICT, and then invest in those things. If it's infrastructure, invest in those things, because we know that in the next a period of time, or we are going to invest to harvest more. Let's say, for example, Mr. Sfiso, education. Education is a special commodity. Even in economics, education is the only commodity, human capital development is the only commodity which has got a backward loop for the demand cave.
Of course.
So education, it has got no immediate effects or no immediate returns. The returns mostly are mid-term or futuristic in nature. So when we are investing, we have to make sure that it is sustainable as we reach there. Any slight mistake in the investment of education has got a huge ripple effect in the mid-term and long-term of the economy. So that's why you see education mostly taking this big share.
As it should, this lion's share. SACCO receipts declining, Doctor. Let me come back to you quickly. 2.6 billion, that's a big decline. It's a big decline. 2.6 billion in Malangeni is a lot of money. Yet, Eswatini Revenue Service is expected to collect a record 16.5 billion in Malangeni. Make that make sense. How feasible is the revenue target? That's the first question. But also, what structural reforms are needed to ensure sustainable domestic revenue generation?
Very, very critical questions that you have asked me. First of all, when SACCO decreases in its revenue, it must not leave us in total disarray. When we have reduction in SACCO, we should have our own safety nets, we should have our own reserves, our own buffer, we should have our own continuity in terms of sustainability when it comes to finance. So the SACCO revenue, it's simply a natural occurrence on the global market due to global disruptions. Then number two, when we talk about targeting, revenue targeting or fiscal targeting, as it stands right now, it might go through what I call a constraint. And as a result, if the target is not met, we must not take offense, but understand that there is potential, but accept that it has been affected by exogenous factors. So I don't really see the target being achieved in a short term, unless maybe in the long-term perspective.
Samu, let me come to you. I'll come back to you, Doctor, because I want us to continue that conversation there, but I do want to get into the health sector. The People's Parliament. But I think drug shortages, but we are seeing an allocation there, 14% of the budget. That is also pretty significant, if you ask me. Key interventions, Central Medical Store, semi-autonomous, and continued partnerships with the U.S. government are critical measures in addressing Eswatini's healthcare challenges.
I think it's Fiso Utsinza in Zabalengul, although the Minister of Health wasn't there, but Begakona PS. I think in Zabayaga Health, I don't know how many motions have been raised in the House with the first session of the 12th Parliament, and Kulumige to the last session of the 11th Parliament, in Zabayaga Health. So in Zabayaga Health, nayo ifike yaba ngengati itsinza kakhulu eMaswati. So now buka le budget is Fiso we are hopeful. We are really hopeful ukuthi loku transforma kwe CMS kutolisita kakhulu live in terms of kufinyelela esiveni kwamaphilisi lokube issue kakhulu for the longest of time. I think sibe now conversations the minister way before the budget asho ukuthi already seyiqalile le transformation seyikhona ingaphandle sefolakele expectly safolakele to transform CMS. I think it's around 140 million if I'm not mistaken le allocate for the transformation of CMS. I think Dr. Kala on this coming financial year which is April, which means we all have our fingers crossed, because uthi tena kangena minister ehhovisi wafikela kuyo. I think indzaba la gijime nayo ever since. I think nasikhuluma naye send my reactions, a speech from the throne, washo ukuthi indzaba la sagijime nayo for the longest of time. He's hopeful ukuthi i-budget letofika nyalo itowenda imehluko in terms of transforming the CMS, introduce ema-systems lamasha, because kufanele ukuthi lenye indzaba ngilendzaba ema-systems, the supply chain yemithi even nayo inema-cracks la kakhona ladzinga ukuthi avalwe. So we are hopeful ukuthi the transformation of CMS itofike yende umehluko. Tikhona ke tindzaba nato tema facilities efula ngekho esimeni lesikahle also. So nakhona ikhona allocation lekhona here yokutransforma ema facilities ukuthi abe ngilawula ngcono, more especially emawadi ekubelekela bomake nasekufika isikhathi.
Yeah, and by systems, I'm sure you're alluding to the security in particular. I think Minister Manqoba Khumalo is a part of that board. That is, the task team is to ensure that with security vele iba bolstered, because because there was no security.
Truthfully, so it was shocking now bona le tindzaba tivela ukuthi just a whole truck of imithi could just go outside the country worth millions, yet emaswati this side ahlete tibhedlela kudimithi. And lokunye lokavela sifisa khumbula ukuthi kunema reports lavelile eParliament previously eliphenyo lelebe khona the whole sector yaka health, kwavela ukuthi lokunye emaphilisi lamanye aya expire ahlete eCMS tibhedlela tingakhoni ke walanza. Yet CMS emaphilisi sekakhona tibhedlela titetiwalanza tingawalanza. So tibhedlela letinye tati ukuthi emaphilisi tiwatfolile yet not. So there is a lot lokukhona lokudinga ukuthi kulungiswe endzabeni yaka health.
Doctor, she's speaking on something very, very important. In the morning, when we were speaking about what we expect, one of the biggest words that you spoke on quite, many a times, prudence. And that is, them being wise with every decision that they make. I want us to get into, this very conversation around the health sector. So I'm speaking about the last session of the 11th Parliament. This was the same issue that was being discussed as a hot topic. The first session of the 12th Parliament last year, again, it was still hot, also informed by, the People's Parliament. It is a hot topic. It has it's part of the lion's share in terms of the allocation. Let's speak about the security systems that she speaks about, the expirations. That speaks to a lack of prudence there, because if pills are going to expire, surely there are some decisions that are not necessarily wise in there, but also the corruption. I know that you also, part of your work is you're a consultant and you advise on policy-making decisions.
Yes.
What are some of the critical policies that, the health sector might want to look into implementing to solve all these issues?
Before I come to the policy issues, focus on the issues of efficiency. Everything begins and ends with efficiency. And in the public sector management, policies are not efficiently handled. There are policies in place, but the problem, the challenge is the challenge of bureaucracy. So-and-so is not there, so there's nothing we can do. And time is ticking, and then the tablets or the medicine is expiring on the other hand. So the public sector is not really running like the private sector. So if efficiency can be the ultimate goal in terms of service delivery on the private sector, the way the private sector does it, then we can expect, this is very important, we can expect positive outcomes. What are the policy models that we can suggest? It's very, very, very important. Result-based policy models are very, very important. Result-based are simply, incentives are based on results.
Right.
So you've been employed to do A, B, C, D at the right time in a right way. An auditor comes who is from the private institution, who is not part of your business as a public sector, and he or she has realized that Mr. Sfiso is sleeping on the job. And so Mr. Sfiso must go. So that is a result-based management system, of which is managed and coordinated by the public-private partnership measures. If you do an M&E, for example, system, and it is managed by the public sector, I don't want to use the word government, allow me to use the word public sector.
Right.
Yeah, M&E is managed by the public sector. So you realize that the loop, what is what we call the policy loop with the 360 degrees takes time. Then corruption comes in. But if it is a public-private partnership, the private sector is scared of losing its job because the next tender doesn't play jokes. So the private sector will ensure that it delivers on time. Also, the public sector will be pushed by the private sector because of lawsuits and other expectations. Then, now that there is now a public-private partnership, we even call it a public-private people's sector. Because of now we are transiting to people governance. People now can talk. Look at what happened during Sibaya. People really spoke in front of the minister, challenging the minister. And we are living in a society whereby the publics are now informed. Social media is everywhere. People know. So engaging people and engaging the right stakeholders at the right time in the right way, it creates a harmonious point of service delivery. So for now, yes, we have lost a lot on the health sector. Like you have said, it has been a political hot cake. And looking at the fact that the ODS, which is the official development assistance or the donor funds, are dwindling slowly but sure, we really have to give it a priority. We cannot afford having a society which is sick, having a society which cannot obtain healthcare services at the right time. Human capital is everything that every country must prioritize.
Thank you, Dr. Efficiencies, human capital, as well as a people-centric government. Very critical insights there from Dr. Let's go for a commercial break. We'll be back shortly.
More. We all seek it. We dedicate our lives to achieving it. We want to grow more, accomplish more, experience more, and become more. This relentless pursuit drives us to innovate and improve. It's why we push the boundaries of what's possible, making today's dreams tomorrow's reality. Partner with a bank that sees beyond the possible and positions you to achieve more. Open an enterprise banking account and take your business to the next level. From startup to success. Because with Standard Bank, there's always more.
You're watching the post-budget speech analysis. I am with Dr. George Chongwa and Sagwelsiwe Khoza, our in-house journalist who does a lot of important work with our parliament in monitoring some of the work that they do on a daily basis. We are continuing our conversation. We want to look into infrastructure development and as well as our economic development now. Samge, this budget earmark 1.2 billion for road infrastructure. Personally, this was something we saw the erratic weather conditions, ravaging a lot of our roads, so much so a lot was disrupted. By the way, significant investments need to be made there. From an economic perspective, Dr. Chongwa, but I just want to understand, what was his reactions, the minister?
Excuse me, thank you so much, Sfiso. Unfortunately, the Honourable Minister wasn't there, but it's to take that, because that is very significant.
Yes.
As to the MPs, remember, good team, Nabafika a parliament during the election time, in Kumbiabo, you can't good see. But most of the country's roads are esmenless kahle. Noma lo mgwaqo unalo litiela unema potholes. Noma lo mgwaqo utelitiela une gravel. Njalo lokubeknet imvula, like you said, akambeki. So this allocation, if you get abajabulisa labaningi ama MPs isikhonile ukukhuluma nabo to hear their reactions, they were happy. Yet still bakhala ngekuthi engabe vele kutawunabela kuto tonkeni letinkhundla because bakhala ngekuthi uyukhanza ukuthi most of the time kuba nginathi leti ngasithi tisonzelene nasedolobheni lokhanza ukuthi ya benefita kakhulu nala ukhanza ukuthi akhambe khona kakhulu le emakhaya khanza akukhonakali khona kufinyelela so we are hopeful ukuthi with this allocation sifiso kutawukhona kufinyelela kuto tonke letinkhundla ku regravelo lemigwaco lengekho esimeni lesikahle kulungiswe imigwaco yelive lenema potholes it was also exciting kuva ukuthi utoqala lo mgwaco lomkhulu waseshiselweni also now lo waselibonjeni lokuvele nakhona ukuthi uto contribute significantly events recently sisibonile I report yaka CIC isho ukuthi lo mgwaco loyoko utawufaka contribution into the performance of the sector yaka construction so we are hopeful ukuthi the sector itokhula this financial year.
I'm not mad, Samu, with the fact that you therefore went to speak to the members of parliament because a significant chunk of this allocation will go towards rural development, and that is where they are centered, these members of parliament. But Dr. let me come back to you. You know, earlier during the day, I mean, in the morning, we spoke about the importance of not only regional trade, but domestic trade, yes, as it were. I do foresee an improvement there when such an allocation is made towards, improving our road infrastructure. 1.2 billion emalangeni, that is the allocation. What is the economic perspective telling us there in terms of, how important this allocation is for unlocking growth as well as enhancing trade?
1.2 billion is not bad compared to like what we discussed before, compared to what has been done so far. It has really demonstrated its value for money, if I may use that word. Now, and also 1.2 billion on infrastructure. We have to understand that infrastructure is a very broad sector, and it has got a huge multiplier effect. When we talk about multiplier effect, it's simply a sector that affects other sectors to move forward. It does not move alone. It brings on board the SMEs. It creates employment, whether they are temporal or permanent employment, but at the end of the day, it helps to generate income. Now, when we talk about infrastructure and going towards the rural sector, it is a very, very good idea because Eswatini actually, when we talk about poverty levels are high in the rural communities. And one of the reasons which has been contributing to high level of poverty, which is between 60 to 70%, has been due to poor infrastructure, like, for example, road network system. Yes, you are sick in the Ekaya. By the time you reach the hospital, if the road is not efficient, if the road is not good, there's poor networks, road network, you are going just to die along the way. The road will finish you off. So by connecting, taking the modern infrastructural facilities to the rural communities is basically linking the economy. And when we talk about linked economy which operates within its own space of efficiency, we call it organic economy. Like, let's say, for example, countries like Russia. Yeah. Okay. Russia, they have reached levels like Japan, Asia, even China. They have reached a level whereby they have become more organic. They are able to have a lot of intra-trade within themselves, such that now they are looking for foreign direct investment. They are looking for where they can even go and do other trade activities. So it's a ripple effect, spiral effect, I mean. So if Eswatini, for example, within the country, there are so many economic activities such that we reach a level whereby what else? Then we start now taking the local investment to other regions and also to other countries. Now that is now a spiral, outward spiral effect. So it is really an ambitious decisions that has been taken towards this infrastructure.
I do want us to, chime back into what you spoke to, a big risk when our dependency on donor funds is so much so that when it stops, and you were referring to the SAC receipts, yes, that we feel a big pinch. That shouldn't be the case. That's what you submitted. But, we've spoken about the health sector as well. It's dwindling, what we are seeing with PEPFAR, with the USAID. In fact, with some of the measures that Donald Trump has since implemented since he assumed office. But let's discuss in further detail all the risks that are there. And how importantly we're able to sustain ourselves with this current budget?
When we talk about risk, especially economic risks, there are basically three approaches you can do. There are risks that you can solve by avoiding them, by allowing things to happen, allowing things to go wrong. You are solving a risk. Of course, people will say this and that, but the only way is not to do anything. Then there are risks that we transfer. We literally get the risk and we take it to our neighbor, for example. It becomes our neighbor's baby. Then there are those risks that we share, the shared risks. Then we know also using prudential approach to what or how much share do we eat. Then we talk about cooperation now. In economics, and right now we are talking about global cooperation, strategic cooperation. That is why now we see the Ministry of Foreign Affairs coming in, who are our strategic partners, so that we can share this risk. To them it's investment, to us it's risk sharing. You cannot fight all the battles alone. It's like in your house. Why do you hire a security guard? You are basically sharing the risks. Or you are transferring the risk, because you know that if a thief comes with a big weapon, you'll be vulnerable. So you bring in a security company to come and help you to fight crime. So same applies. When we talk about economic risks, we have to define, is this a shared risk? Is it a transferable risk? Or is it an avoidable risk? In that way, we'll be able to navigate prudently.
Speaking of avoidable risks, Samge, indzaba yemigwaqo uteke indzaba yakwekuthi emalunga eParliament lokulinyeva kakhulu ukuthi le migwaqo noma ngayikhona ilitiyela noma ngabe igravel solo maybe le migwaqo akhona ama potholes lakhona. There has been, we've had a pro-based program in the country before. That is not, there was a conversation around it's not necessarily sustainable, even though it does solve the problem short term. But looking forward and looking at this current allocation, do we foresee imigwaqo letawakhiwa perhaps even njengelitiyela lelicinile nale emaphandleni, also critically the maintenance therein, because imigwaqo sitawubekisa nje ngeyithabantu highway uyayukhanza ukuthi ilungisiwe kunasicephu nasi khansi lesinye sesilimele njalo uyabona khanza ukuthi siyakha phinze siyalinyalelwa indzaba ye maintenance iyakhulunywa yini?
So uteka indzaba le very important, because MPs nakakhuluma eParliament ngendzaba yemigwaqo, but we really appreciate siyabona ukuthi indzaba ye pro-base even isitile ikakhulukati letindzawo letingathi tisemakhaya ikholile ngena i-pro-base, but the maintenance of le migwaqo yelive ke kuhamba kanjani? Nyalo sikhuluma ngenzaba ukuthi silive sihlaselwe imithelela yeguquka kwesimo selitulu kunetimvula letinyende kakhulu. Lithini ngeliplan lekuthi uma kwendeka lemigwaqo ilimala emkhathini nje lapha ibudget seyiphume khona uhulumende sekasebenzisa siyakhumbula ukuthi kunatimvula lesisuka kudo sifiso Minister and the PS and the whole Ministry of Public Works yakhala ngekuthi already imali lesiphakeleyo nasisisebenzisile sayocela lenye futhi imali. Remember bekulimele emabloho lathinza impilo debamvu bekumele kuvulwe tikolwa mele bamvu bahambe bayimitfolamphilo. So indzaba ye proper structured maintenance plan yemigwaqo yelive, it's very critical. I think indvuna abayiphathisile nakhona ku-11 Parliament ike yakhulunywa nakhona ukuthi hulumende udzinga a proper plan yekumaintaina imigwaqo yelive. Lekhala ngako kelitiko ukuthi akusatawusatsa sikhatsi, because already imigwaqo yelive leminyende ayikho esimeni lesikahle. So kuba neplan lelitasithi thine le mali lena nje ihlale ukuthi i-maintain imigwaqo yelive kutasibita. Siyakhumbula ukuthi kunanalibandla lelikhona lelitawubuka i-Roads Authority. So there was a bill lebeyikhona eParliament around that. Ukuthi kube naleli bandla leloko litawusita ke kuthenini kwakheke the proper structure sekuthi imigwaqo yelive i-maintaineka kanjani.
Sabu, I like the submissions that you're making because they speak to, a glass half full perspective, which is what we really want to do as a government, as a nation, as citizens. We can complain all day, but we also saw some submissions there that put a lot of smiles in a lot of people's faces, Doctor, particularly on public sector as well as social spending. 500 million emalangeni set aside. That's 500 million emalangeni for public sector salary review. That has been a conversation. That has been a very big conversation. But given the concerns that were there about, the wage bill sustainability, is this the right move at this time?
Yes, it is basically the strategic moment to review salaries, especially in the public sector. Eswatini has got a huge wage bill, or such it has had, allow me to use those words, has had, in the fact that even, I remember IMF and World Bank had even intervened at some time, I think, if not mistaken, 5 to 6 years ago. But now government managed to manage it, but still it remains that 80% of the employers is the government, it's the public sector. Now, it has got a huge effect in terms of the monetary value, in terms of inflation and so on and so forth. So when you do a public sector review, the salary review, it must be handled as a matter of urgency and as a matter of like an egg. Because once you make a mistake in the salary review, you are likely to challenge or to create constraint in the fiscal space of the country. Imagine how much money goes per month into the spending and also on the revenue part, just when there's a public spending. So it must be, it was a good move for the Minister of Finance to have considered the salary review as a matter of urgency for now.
Sitting at number 3 in terms of a significant allocation has been the Ministry of Agriculture. I know, Doctor, in the morning we spoke about, how critical this particular portfolio is for the kingdom in terms of, sustaining its economy, but more so because it leans really on food sovereignty and food security, which is critical. And that defines, in essence, the word lifeblood of the economy, because that means we have food on our tables, but also have money on our tables. But Sam, let me come to you. You did mention that Minister Chauka wasn't necessarily present. You've done work parliament. Livela kangwane litalithuthukisa lelithini kakhulu kunatikhathi la khona kunensaya yeguquguquka kwesimo selitulu. Sitting at 1.65 billion emalangeni. It's pretty much, yancika la Lions share nayo. Talk to me about the importance there.
Indeed, Sifiso, litiko letekulima besilibona over the years vele nalo lithola lingathi liphakelo lelingathi linconyanyana.
Number 3,
yeah. So lesikubukile nyalo Sifiso ukhuluma indzaba ye climate change. Losikhuluma nasibuka emuva eminyakeni lesisuka ku sibone shortfall in terms of production yethu yembila even already sisithenga umbila even ukanzi produce around sibe around 80,000 metric tons of maize per year. Sehlile ke from there. I think umnyaka lesikhona khona kuthola kudla lokungathi kunconyanyana. I think it was 2021 lasikhona lekufika khona 120,000 metric tons, but nyalo due to climate change sehlile kakhulu silive lokusiniketa ke insaye now ukuthi silive ke senda njani. Kule budget ya agriculture ngibonile ukuthi kubekiwe imali etside ukuthi kube khona imali leya kuma communities kwakhiwe emadam lata usitha sive ukuthi sikhone kulima noma ngangikuphi sifiso singasameli ukuthi mhlambe in October la khona imvula seticala khona sikhone khona kulima anytime thina kuchamuka whatever simo lesichamukako even isikhanze ukuthi sikhonile kulima. I think imvuna yaka agriculture also Mr. Mandla Jauka nayo sina kafika wakhuluma ngenza food sovereignty ukuthi silive phela asikhone lokukhicida lokudla lokwanele sikubeke etafuleni and then lokunye lokunengi kwako bese sikhiphela ngaphandle live kuze sikhona silive kutimela uye athanze ukuthi kuze singakhona ukuthi sinciphise labantu akukhona kusishayela umthefo ngoba silive that now lambile sifiso kulula ukuthi lomunye umuntu akushayela umthefo on how you are being governed and how you are live lakho ukuthi uliphatha kanjani. So we are hopeful nakhona etiko letekulima ukuthi lesikhathi lesi this allocation itophemvula letinsaya letikhona letinyende even jakhumbula ukuthi sinemadam lamakhulu emaproject lamakhulu akho even umkhondvo ngwavuma nakhona tokhona ku respond to indzaba ye-Monday and respond also to indzaba ye-food security even.
Yeah, and it was indeed a big conversation because over 50% of our agriculture has been rain-fed, and therefore that water collection, that smart water collection has to be made a priority. Doctor, let me come back to you still on public sector and social social spending. Umhlaba wekhute lwandle na ingonyama yemhlaba iteka yona indzaba ye-social spending, indzaba ye-social grants. Doctor, we have seen social grants increasing. This budget is speaking to a rising 600, million emalangeni, as well as a disability grant at 450. 600 as well as 450. I beg your pardon. The question then becomes the long-term fiscal implications of expanding social welfare programs in the face of some of the revenue constraints that we have discussed this evening.
Yes, first of all, when we talk about social welfare, we should not forget one of the government's mandate of leaving no one behind. It's a mandate of inclusivity. It's basically a mandate of appreciating human value. And we are going towards 2030, which is basically the Agenda 2030 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And Eswatini is one of the countries, fortunately enough, that has remained committed through infrastructure development. And now this budget has transited towards, improved social spending. And when we talk about the increase in social grants, we should not look at grants as a birthday party kind of money. We should look at grants as enablers. It's like you get capital from the bank without interest. So when we have grants, social-driven grants, we must take it like a 13th check, not for parties, but that is the money that we can use to empower the people to help themselves. That is basically the sustainability aspect. So it's a very, very positive move, and actually, personally, I was expecting that this time around. Last year, it was infrastructure driven. This year, in short, it is now become a people-driven budget, which is a very, very good move.
Interesting. Somewhere, as we wrap up, I do want to come back to you because your first submission today spoke on an urgent increase on youth affairs issues, of course, articulated by the minister there, the person leading that portfolio. We are seeing 111 million allocated for youth empowerment programs. Something lokufuna sishayele tandla silivela kangwane. Kunama policy mechanisms lokufuna ukuthi abese-ke ayayilandzela noma sithi ayiphekedele le mali lengaka to ensure ukuthi translate into meaningful employment and entrepreneurship opportunities. Indzaba yemathuba emsebenzi nokuthi bantu batakhele imisebenzi yawo iyancika lana kakhulu. Engabe yini lenikutfolile on this particular subject?
Ngiyabonga Sifiso. Indvunana sikhuluma nayo idumisile kakhulu about this allocation. Yaveta ukuthi imali ebebasolo bayimele balitiko for the longest of time because abantu labasha bayachubeka bayakhala Sifiso, abantu labasha bayachubeka even bayakhula, abantu labasha ukhanze ukuthi etikoleni incumbi yabo abacethe. Nawungaye uhambe Sifiso in the country ubuke bamfu labasha labangasebenzi ukuthi bangaki, ubuke bamfu labasha labadzinge labaswele emakhono ukuthi bangaki. So getting such allocation lekaso silive, we are hopeful ukuthi tosita kakhulu to close those gaps ebamfu labasha. Na noma ke bamfu labasha Sifiso incumbi yabo bakhala ngalo ukuthi bese kuba nemicabo lelikhulu kakhulu ekufinyeleleni kwaleyo mali lekhona la ngabe uhulumende uyibekile.
Okay, lastly, in fact, let me start with you, Samge. Just your, very briefly, I'm giving you 30 seconds, nangabe uhlulekile 35 seconds, your reaction kule budget speech lena.
So I'm so excited besikhuluma nje with colleagues nasitangalana ukuthi the second session of the 12th parliament itoba ngilele interesting kakhulu with this budget because sitawabona ema motion lamaningi asukuma even sitawabona ema project lamaningi asukuma even with this allocation. I must say I'm so excited. I can't wait to see where our government and with this budget.
Yeah, and His Majesty did say it is the year of transformation to the promised land. And indeed, we must see that happen. I love your sentiments, Sam. Doctor, your takeaways from this budget speech. What are your sentiments?
Well, my sentiments is congratulations, Ministry of Finance and the entire His Majesty's government for such a prudential approach towards public sector finance and sustainability. However, we have to remain resilient because transformation to the promised land is not an easy path. Every time in life when you decide to take a positive approach to life, there are always resistance. So it's my humble appeal that we remain resilient and patient with one another, especially even as we go through the desert of transformation. So economic resilience, prudence should be the ultimate goal. Otherwise, I wish everyone the best.
Absolutely. This has been Dr. Chungwa, our economic analyst today, helping us drill into the numbers as well as the funds that were disseminated to all these unique portfolio ministries with one shared common to serve you, the people of Eswatini. And this has been Samuel Siwekoza, our journalist. You know her voice from our news in terms of her anchorship there, as well as Dase Palamende, the program that she capably, presents. But the budget, it promises transformation, it promises growth, it promises resilience, and we've dissected its implications from record-breaking economic projections to the realities of the revenue constraints and fiscal discipline. Prudence, as Dr. liked to say, but as Eswatini charts its course for 2025 and 2026, the question remains, will this budget deliver on its bold ambitions? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: how we navigate the months ahead is going to define the nation's economic trajectory. Thank you so much for joining us on this in-depth post-analysis. I am Sifiso Ngumalo. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.
More. We all seek it. We dedicate our lives to achieving it. We want to grow more, accomplish more, experience more, and become more. This relentless pursuit drives us to innovate and improve. It's why we push the boundaries of what's possible, making today's dreams tomorrow's reality. Partner with a bank that sees beyond the possible and positions you to achieve more. Open an enterprise banking account and take your business to the next level. From startup to success. Because with Standard Bank, there's always more.
The best league in the world.
Now he's in a strange position. Haaland spots that. Oh, fantastic!
This is my first time here.
Hopefully it's my last.
My dear friends, here we are, all in our true colors. Your transfer papers, your key to the Mvule Kingdom.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I know.
Here are your clippers. Clippers.
Who's in?
We are prefects. We run this place. So let's act like it.
Solomon, the head prefect, quick. Is my collar straight?
We'll be out of Mvule High before you can pronounce the word scholarship.
We have a mystery to solve. The only way we can make a difference is if we stick together. When I'm head prefect, each and every student will have a voice.
You need to show that new squeak Nomvule.
I hate this school!
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds, full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, to feel the rush of life overwhelm you, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. You ask, and we give you the royal experience. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. There are but a few places on earth so special, so unique, and so spectacular, where it becomes the rite of passage for the ambitious travelers, the courageous souls, to all have the one and only royal experience. That day when you look deep into your heart and leap into an ancient world so very different from your own, where magic, beauty, and love are shared forever, then you will have a royal experience. There is just one place on earth where the people make you feel a part of their kingdom, where you just might volunteer to awaken spirits, enrich minds, and work alongside communities to build, motivate, and inspire. This is truly the royal experience. When you dream of a different world, beyond the ordinary, beyond time, discover just how far you go